So, FromSoft.
Yeah, that got your attention, huh?
The studio known for producing Peak, from the interconnected level designs of Dark Souls 1 to the savior of open world games in the modern era, known as Elden Ring. It seems as if they just cannot miss. And as a normal person, I too have enjoyed all the games in the Seki Soulsborne roster. But despite my love for the series, there was always one black sheep, the literal middle child of the Dark Souls trilogy, the one which was not graced with Miyazaki's foot fetish. Dark Souls 2. Reportedly the worst FromSoft game ever made, with unprecedented amounts of jank. Now I've wanted to play Dark Souls 2 for a while, just to see if it's really that bad. And once it went on sale, I realized it was the perfect time to experience the worst FromSoft title ever made. But holy did I get more than I bargained for. So I'm going to be doing this series a little bit differently. As of now, I haven't even finished the game. I've got well over 700 gigs worth of footage, spanning well over 33 hours. So, my experience, TM, will be split into multiple parts. This round of recordings were also plagued with recording issues, so each part I'll give you the recording issue of the month, just to warn you guys of some of the things you may notice during the few times I end up using raw game audio. This week's issue, OBS update. It reset all of my settings, so you can hear everything I do, including me molesting my controller every half second like it's an ASMR video.
I played Elden Ring.
But anyway, that's enough out of me. On to the first part of the Dark Souls 2 Chronicles. So, after watching the second greatest intro cinematic I've ever seen, second only to the it was onto the character creator, and I did what any normal person would do. Try my absolute hardest to blind everyone with the gross incandescence of the sun. There was also the issue of starting class. Now, for my first playthrough of a Souls game, I pretty much always go bitch vigor and pump strength to the max, with this usually being the simplest and requiring the least amount of prep time, stat investment, and NPC interaction. But this time, there's a wrinkle in my plans. Throughout the endless cope you hear about DS2, there's always one thing which comes up.
Level ADP.
Level ADP, just the constant
Level
ADP.
ADP.
Level it up.
Level
It's so
ADP.
hard.
ADP's the way to go.
Oh my god, you should level it up.
Adaptability, rather lovingly known as ADP, a new stat introduced to spice up builds and force you to space out levels far more than in the other games, where you could just power level your desired stat. But I tried to balance the amount of ADP with an appropriate amount of strength and vigor, eventually landing on the knight. And after an old lady called me ugly, it was off to complete the simple and, unbeknownst to me, completely optional tutorial. Finally, after I wasted my time doing that completely optional tutorial, I entered Mula, and was graced with the greatest theme music I've ever heard in a hub world.
I get it.
And after exploring a little bit, I found my way into the Forest of Giants, a place rife with ganks, explosives, and turtle men who can stunlock you to death. Okay, one attack is all I can. I also got jumped by some guy with a massive sword and shield for some reason. While getting ganked, might I add. In this area, you also find your first NPC. Pate? Pate? Krabby Patty tells me he was a treasure hunter, but is too scared to get jumped by some hollows. Coward. So, in his infinite wisdom, he lets you go ahead, locking the door behind you. And I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this gaggle of hollows, I immediately understood what he meant. But after scouring the area and making it back, he rewarded me with a white soapstone sign. And after a bit more exploration, opening a shortcut, and almost getting crushed by a boulder... Oh! Boulder! Oh! I was all ready to fight the boss. But I wasn't gonna go through the worst Dark Souls alone. You gotta spread the misery. So, introducing my people I scam. Friends.
I do something cool so I can use it. Do something cool.
What to do.
Hey everyone.
So we all walked into the fog wall and found the undead giant. And for killing a dead guy, we were rewarded with the soldier's key and its soul. So I explored a little bit more, got my shit pushed in by an NPC a couple of times. Oh, he was 1 HP! Leveled up some, and it was onto the Tower of Flames. Speaking of, In DS2, whenever you level up a stat, it also increases your max HP, which incentivizes stat variety and kinda defeats the purpose of vigor pumping early, which is good. I always found that in these games there was a minimum HP requirement, where you couldn't get one-tapped, but still had a decent number of points in your respective stat. Anyway, the Flaming Tower was a relatively short area, with large enemies with very small health bars, though it introduces a feature which was relatively lost in the future games. Area features which actively impact the boss arena. In this case, you can pull some levers around the map to increase the size of the arena. Despite only a small number of bosses having the feature, still pretty cool that it's here, and I wish it was in the other games. After pulling all the levers, it was onto the Dragon Rider, who we jumped into oblivion. Fight back! Fight back! You know the drill, level up, explore for no reason, next area. And now we're onto No Man's Wharf. Wharf? I don't know. Which is a weird title since there's a lot of people just kinda chilling around. I mean, chilling until they try and kill you, but you know. It was in this area where we found Lucatiel, who told us her life story and vowed to help us. Wow, if only talking to women in real life with this. It was also in this area which I found a weapon, a sword. So thick, it was more like a hunk of raw I'm not doing that bit again. It's the Nuts Ultra Great Sword. We progressed up the wharf, eventually finding a bell which summons our Uber out of here. So it was into the bowels of the ship for the Flexile Sentry, where I saw that Lucatiel wanted to help us take him down. So I summoned her, and she proceeded to fall off the map and die instantly. And incidentally, after we murdered the Flexing Sentry, the Uber took us straight to jail. Now, the Lost Bastille, it's a little bit different from the other areas, and the first instance of what I like to call the level is the hard part, have fun running this moron, or Tulashapetafaran. The Lost Bastille is littered with explosives and enemies that are programmed to use wide sweeping attacks. Combine this with an ultra great sword, and you got a spicy time.
Ooh, that brother's floating in the air. How could his hands do this?
They also expanded their brains by 13 times making this area, as there's places to go using the explosives to break down walls. Something Battlefield would shamelessly steal 12 years earlier. This area was also pretty huge, with there being 3 separate bosses to get to from here. But first on the chopping block was the Ruined Sentinels. A relatively simple gank boss with some potential for some big damage if you're low on ADP.
That's quite big.
But we got him eventually. Connecting to the Bastille is the Sinner's Rise, where we found another Flexing Sentry and fought the Lost Sinner. The first main boss we fought. And boy did she, yes I said she,
That's a woman?
do some fatty damage, but jumping her with 4 people makes it pretty simple. After every main boss, you get a Primal Bonfire, which can only be used to teleport back to Mula. Basically just there to tell you that you're done with this set of areas. So once I got back to Majules, I wanted to find out what was at the bottom of this massive well. And it just so happens that a talking cat sells the cat ring, which essentially makes it impossible to die from fall damage. So I equipped it and very carefully...
The amount of... Fuck. Yeah.
And once I got down there, I found the Grave of Saints. Presumably an endgame area, so I held off on exploring it for now. There was another area which I knew how to get to. But first I needed to unpetrify the woman holding the lever and survive a couple gang fights, but I eventually got to the bonfire of the Shaded Forest. From the bonfire there was 3 ways to go. 2 normal and 1 covered in mist. I think you can guess which one I picked. And apart from the fact that you can't see shit and the ghost enemies are modeled to look exactly like player shades, it was a chill area. Found a head in some rubble and finally made it to the area proper. We also failed at some parkour.
Hold up. Yeah. Evolve's dead.
Now, this area makes full use of an item called the Fragrant Branch of Yore, an item which can unpetrify a lot of the stone statues you've seen around Drang Lake, with there being about 13 different statues to be unpetrified in this area alone. But I'd already used all of them to get here, so we fucked around a little bit and eventually found our way to Scorpion Nest Najka. Basically just a rehash of Quelaag from DS1, but instead of pyromancy, she uses sorcery. But she couldn't stand up to the +5 greatsword and got murdered in literally 40 seconds. Her boss arena led to the Doors of Pharos, an area which, similarly to the Shaded Forest, utilizes a consumable item as its main exploration gimmick, with this area using Pharos lockstones, which you can place into these mouth-looking things to get a reward or utilize a level gimmick. But they are literally everywhere in this area, with it all culminating in the Royal Rat Authority. And I think I speak for most people when I say this, the worst boss in the whole game. The boss is pretty generic. A large animal fight, you know, whole body hitboxes, high damage, low HP. But the real issue comes from the 5 rats which have toxic attacks. This will melt even the girthiest of health bars. And after a couple of deaths, I realized that these things made the fight borderline impossible with just a greatsword. Solution? Re-equip the hand axe, and pray that I can kill the rats quick enough to not get any toxic. And I was able to kill them with 5 nearly perfect swings, with their father closely following. Our reward? Covenant. The Rat Covenant. But that's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. We still got down the well. And that's it for the first part. This will be a long series spanning around 5 videos, since there's like 30-something areas, not including DLC. So I may start skipping smaller areas with non-important bosses and some exploration elements to try and keep my sanity. I'm also not the greatest at multitasking, so it may take a while between parts, so yeah, see you next time.